Incredible moment, single dad janitor saves CEO from fire, her surprising first words revealed. Jack glanced at the clock on the wall, a bitter reminder that this night was just another in a relentless series of late shifts. He took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scent of bleach and varnished wood, but it felt heavier tonight, wrapping around him like a shroud. The sleek, corporate building towers above the city, mocking him with its glistening windows and executive lives, while he spent another night grappling with his own limitations. It was all for Lily, his bright-eyed daughter, who dreamed of a more vibrant world, circumstances he could scarcely fathom for himself. As he pushed the mop across the polished floor, the rhythmic swish echoed like the marrow of his determination, yet he couldn't shake the growing despondency pressing against his heart. He wondered if he'd ever make enough to send her to a better school or afford that bicycle she'd been begging for. Jack could see her face, lit up with excitement, and then the dull weight of reality crashed in on him once more. Could one simple act of heroism change his fate, or was he destined to remain the hidden worker in the shadows of success? In that heavy silence, urgency suddenly erupted as a crackling roar cut through the stillness. A blinding flash lit up the corridor. Shock coursed through him as he realized what had happened. An electrical fire ignited, flames racing, consuming everything in its path. Hot air surged toward him, mingling with the acrid scent of smoke. Panic rattled the building as shrieks echoed through the hall. But within that chaos, a different kind of clarity emerged. Jack hesitated, caught in a web of instinct and fear. Should he flee? Or should he dive into the flames? He felt the weight of the world leaning hard on his shoulders. The world around him screamed for him to escape, yet a deeper sense of urgency propelled him forward. Racing toward Sarah, the powerful CEO who had always evaluated him through a lens of disinterest, a river of conflicting emotions surged within him. Did she ever even know his name? The thought pounded in his brain as he plunged through the thickening smoke. Come on. We have to move. Jack urged, taking her arm firmly as flames engulfed the edges of her office. To his surprise, he felt her fragility amidst her authority, eyes wide with disbelief, and Jack found himself yanking her from the clutches of fear. In that moment, he became more than a janitor, he became her lifeline. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every step away from danger, Jack could feel the gnawing of his past and future curving around him. As they tumbled out into the open air, sirens screaming to life, his chest heaved with adrenaline and shame. She's the CEO, a titan of industry, and he was just a janitor. As Sarah turned to him, astonishment dripping from her voice, he felt both pride and desperation. Why did you help me? I never even knew your name. Her words echoed deep within him, igniting a war of emotions. Did he seek recognition, a way out of financial shackles, or was he content in the shadows? Societal expectations loomed. He saw the barriers rising like walls higher than any skyscraper above. Jack's thoughts spiraled. Could he stand alongside her, or would he always be the overlooked janitor? As uncertainty gnawed at him, the stakes of this unexpected encounter loomed larger. More questions surfaced, and Jack felt himself trembling, torn between who he was and what he could become. Which way to go? The fire might have been extinguished, but the weakening resolve inside him ignited a relentless storm. What was he willing to sacrifice? What bridges would he dare to cross? Jack stood at the precipice of determination and self-doubt, and as the smoke curled around him, he couldn't shake the haunting question that lingered. What will you choose, Jack? The weight of that question hung in the air, heavy with uncharted possibilities. The fire trucks roared into the scene, their sirens piercing through the collective shock that filled the air. Jack stood off to the side, his heart hammering against his ribcage, overwhelmed by the bitter realization of his own insignificance. He watched as paramedics rushed to tend to shaken employees, all while he was still caught in the whirlwind of his decision, a decision that had defied every expectation. As Sarah was guided over to the medical team, she looked back at Jack, her expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. The thin veneer of her composed exterior began to crack as adrenaline faded, revealing the vulnerability that lay beneath her power. It was a glimpse of the human behind the corporate facade that had always loomed above him. But how could she ever understand the weight of his life when it was so easy to be simply the hero or the savior in her eyes? Jack felt the surge of adrenaline starting to ebb, replaced by an unsettling cocktail of exhilaration and dread. It dawned on him then that saving her could ripple beyond that terrifying moment. Would this act brand him as more than just the anonymous janitor floating through this ultramodern corporate world? Or would it only strengthen the divide, labeling him as a mere anomaly in Sarah's ascent? In the quiet chaos surrounding him, Jack's mind raced. Recognition might open doors, yes. But recognition would also come with expectations and judgments, a new level of scrutiny that might hold him to a standard he felt he would never reach. He could already envision evening conversations with Lily about the nuances of ambition versus altruism, revealing his inner turmoil to her eager, innocent gaze. "Jack! There you are." A voice broke through his reverie, and he turned to see Mike, his supervisor. The overly formal man gestured him over with an air of urgency laced with astonishment. "What happened in there? I heard you were in the office with Sarah." "I can't believe you." "It was nothing," Jack interrupted, feeling the heat of embarrassment wash over him. "I just did what anyone would do." "Anyone? You saved her life. This is huge for you. You could be more than just a janitor." Mike's voice was tinged with excitement, but Jack only felt his stomach churn. What did that mean, more than just a janitor? Did anyone really think of the man behind the mop beyond this singular act of courage? "Before you start making assumptions, just let me clean up my shift, Mike," Jack said, trying to shake off the impending burden of expectation. Every eye of disbelief only sharpened his doubts, a spotlight illuminating every flaw within him. As he returned to his mopping, the dance between self-doubt and determination resumed its endless waltz. Jack couldn't ignore the potential new path unfurling before him, nor the simultaneous fear of what it meant to chase it. Were his long-held ambitions misplaced? Was he allowed to dream about climbing out of his past, with a future painted brighter than the shabby walls of the maintenance closet? He finished his cleaning, the rhythmic swish of the mop now a metronome of his conflicted thoughts. A phone call buzzed in his pocket. A notification from Sarah popped up, an invitation for a discussion, to thank him properly. His heartbeat quickened. The time had come to face whatever this was meant to become. Jack stood at the crossroads, balancing between boundless opportunity and crippling fear. Could he step onto the path before him, or would it crumble beneath the weight of his self-doubt? As the night deepened, he stared into the twinkling lights of the city, wrestling with the dawning realization, what if this was the tipping point he had always wanted? But deep-seated fears clung to him like shadows, urging him to retreat. The lingering question unfurled in his mind. What might he lose if he embraced this chance? The moment of truth hovered just out of reach, and Jack knew he had to decide soon. Would he rise from the ashes, or would he remain tethered to his past? As Jack's thoughts spiraled, the night felt alive with the pulse of unanswered possibilities. The horizon was wide, but darkness loomed in potential regret. Would he have the courage to illuminate his path, or would he hide in the twilight of indecision? The hum of the city streets faded as Jack navigated the office building's deserted halls, the echo of his footsteps amplifying the weight of his looming decision. The invitation from Sarah lay heavy in his mind, unspooling both horizons of potential and the inescapable dread of exposure. Why did something so simple, a thank you, feel like climbing a mountain? With each step towards her office, he replayed the moment over and over in his mind. If only Jack had processed his actions with the wisdom of hindsight, if only he had been aware of the significance at that moment. Yet, despite his self-recrimination, something deeper was beginning to flicker within him, a longing for recognition, perhaps even merit. He arrived at Sarah's office door, the polished surface reflecting his apprehensive expression. It had the aura of opportunity mixed with an intimidating reserve, summoning courage he was unsure he possessed. As he hesitated, he recalled Lily's innocent admiration of him. His daughter saw a hero. Could he see a hero in himself? Swallowing hard, Jack tapped lightly on the door. "Come in," Sarah called, her voice laced with a softened gratitude that entangled with his anxiety. He pushed the door open, stealing a glimpse of the strong, composed woman now grounded by the vulnerability he had witnessed moments before. "Jack, thank you for coming," she said, gesturing for him to sit. He could see the slight tremor in her hands, underscored by the glow of her laptop illuminating her face. In that instant, she transformed from untouchable executive to a figure who mirrored his own unease. "It was nothing. Really, just instinct," he replied, trying to deflect the weight of the moment. There was a peculiar intimacy in their shared experience that felt profound, yet unnerving. "It was everything. You saved my life, Jack," she countered, her eyes sharp and sincere. "I don't think you understand what that means to me. You had no obligation." The emphasis on "you" made Jack's pulse quicken. He grappled with the realization that she was not simply thanking him, she was inviting him to step onto a new platform. "Maybe, but I am just a janitor," he included with self-deprecation, attempting to shield himself from what felt like an imminent spotlight. "You shouldn't have to thank me. I'm just doing my job." "That's where you're mistaken," Sarah replied, leaning forward slightly. "You did something greater than your job. You took a risk that most wouldn't dare to. Don't you see? You have potential." Her words resonated deep within, forcing him to confront a truth he had long buried. He had talents and strengths beyond simple custodial work, ones that were begging to be unleashed. But would the world, or more importantly, Jack himself, allow that? The conversation shifted, moving beyond pleasantries toward exploration. Sarah asked about his life, his ambitions. As he opened up, he felt a shift, a release. He spoke about his daughter, his aspirations, the longing for something more. Each word invited a sense of validation he had never sought but desperately needed. "It's not just about saving someone else's life, is it? It's about saving yourself too, Jack," she said, her tone gentle yet firm. The implication struck a chord, igniting an ember of determination in his chest. Could he ever see the horizon beyond his past, the ambition waiting just out of reach? "That's a heavy statement," he murmured, considering her words carefully, contemplating the weight of change. Would he have the courage to heed it? Sarah's phone vibrated, slicing through the moment's gravity, drawing his attention back to the present. When she glanced at the screen, an emotion flitted across her face. Was it concern or initiative? "I have to take this, but I want to hear more from you. Will you meet me again? There is something profound here, and perhaps you need a mentor," she said, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that felt invigorating. Walking out of her office, Jack's thoughts raced. The opportunity ahead was both thrilling and terrifying. Could he embrace this chance, or would he retreat? Once again to the shadows of obscurity, he stepped into the night, brushing against the walls of doubt, pondering Sarah's offer. A door had opened, but what awaited him beyond it? As the city lights shimmered like stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a tumultuous journey. Could he truly believe in himself? With his heart pounding, he realized that to reclaim his life would require a transformation that felt monumental. And just as his thoughts reached a fever pitch, another notification chimed in, an introduction to a leadership program from Sarah, urging him to explore who he was meant to be. As he read the details, the question spiraled once more. Was he ready to claim his place in a world he felt foreign to? Would he have the resilience to step into the light, or were these merely fleeting thoughts soon to vanish in the shadows? Jack paused, reality dawning upon him. What awaited him was an immediate confrontation with fear and possibility. Would he rise to meet it, or would he allow the familiar grip of self-doubt to hold him back once again? The engagement with the idea of change rattled through Jack as he paced restlessly in his living room. The flickering fluorescent light overhead felt both suffocating and illuminating, a harsh reminder of the life he had resigned himself to lead. The invitation to embrace a new persona didn't merely linger, it throbbed like the pulse in his neck, an incessant reminder of the potential unfulfilled. Lily's laughter echoed from the kitchen, drawing him back to the life he had built, one filled with love albeit overshadowed by his unaddressed ambitions. Jack could almost see her face as the youthful courage evident in her dreams, her confidence in chasing after them. If only he could reflect that confidence back to her. Instead, he was wrestling with the very notion of himself, a janitor whose impact felt marginal at best. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows across the room, Jack's phone vibrated, a modern-day signal leading him further down an unfamiliar path. It was an email from Sarah, detailing the leadership program, promising insights and a network that could potentially reshape his life. Instinct prompted him toward the accept button, yet a chokehold of fear surged through him. What if this was just another instance of him trying and failing? What if he stumbled in front of people who had spent years cultivating their professionalism while he had merely grasped a broom and bucket for survival? He remembered Sarah's unwavering belief in him, the way her eyes sparkled with a conviction that seemed almost tangible. "You have potential." The words reverberated through his core, challenging his self-imposed limitations. Could he be more than just a vessel of maintenance? Could he lead rather than merely follow? The conflict raged within him, an old life against a burgeoning dream. He grabbed a pen, scribbling his thoughts, the ink pouring out like the hope he was attempting to manifest. Each word was an affirmation, a confrontation of his doubts, a commitment to try. "I want to rise, I want to show Lily and myself that I can be more," he wrote, the words becoming a pledge rather than mere thoughts. But the tightness in his chest grew as the nagging voice of doubt interjected, "Are you ready for the scrutiny? The challenge? What if you fail?" He shut his eyes, inhaling deeply, trying to push through the murkiness of self-doubt. The desire to recreate himself drowned out the fears, echoing louder than the uncertainties. This was not merely about him anymore, it was about being the kind of father Lily needed, a figure filled with substance, dreams, and the courage to pursue them. This time, he steeled his resolve. Jack opened the email again, hesitating only briefly, a moment that felt like an eternity. He clicked on the acceptance link with purpose, and in that brief gesture, a flicker of fear was swapped for an even bolder hope. The following morning, he dressed with intention, his hair slightly neater than usual, his uniform pressed and clean. Each piece of fabric became a tangible reminder of the promise he made to himself, a uniform that no longer symbolized just a job but a stepping stone toward something greater. Walking through the office building once again felt different. The walls revealed a new color to him, they stood proud, not merely as structures but as boundaries waiting to be crossed. As he made his way to the designated meeting room for the program, he felt a rush of adrenaline he hadn't experienced in years, an electrifying thrill mixed with uncertainty. The room was filled with faces, some excited, others anxious. A mix of pasts and futures stirring in the air. Jack took a seat, his heart racing, but instead of retreating into the shades, he leaned forward to absorb every moment, every word, working on that hero he longed to see reflected in Lily's eyes. Then it happened. The facilitator began recounting stories of transformative journeys, their struggles mirroring his own, voices filled with stories of fear, resilience, and eventual triumph. And just as Jack felt a kinship with them, a question loomed larger in his mind. Would they accept him? Would he fully step into this world? A moment of clarity leaped through him as he straightened in his chair. The real confrontation was not with others, but with himself and the fears he had harbored. With a newfound surge of courage, Jack uncrossed his arms, ready to share his own story. As he waited for the moment to speak, an unsettling thought sparked within him: what if they don't see the potential Sarah saw? But maybe that's precisely where his strength lay, facing the challenge head-on, exposing his vulnerability. As he opened his mouth to speak, the door swung open abruptly. Jack's heart pounded. Was this yet another interruption, or an opportunity waiting to unveil itself? The door swung open, revealing a flurry of chaos and urgency. A woman, panic etched across her face, rushed in, her blouse crisp yet disheveled, a stark contrast to the orderly environment Jack was trying to embrace. A sudden tension surged through the room, the energy electrified by her frantic presence. She was bobbing with anxious urgency, her eyes darting over the assembled attendees until they locked onto Jack. "Please. The elevator, there's smoke. We need to get everyone out." Her voice cut through the room like a knife, instantly drawing everyone's focus away from their personal fears and toward a collective crisis. Jack felt a jolt of instinct shoot through him. This was instinctual, primal, an emergency. "Follow me," he shouted, tapping into a voice he had never known he had, spurred by the immediate need to act. He stood, catching the eyes of a few of his fellow participants, who seemed stunned into inaction. "We need to move now," he urged, his heart pounding not only from adrenaline but also from the realization that he'd stepped up after all. That he took the lead, storming back toward the direction from which the woman had come, his heart racing and mouth dry. Images of Lily flashed through his mind, her bright, trusting eyes. He needed to be brave, not just for the strangers around him but for her. As he sprinted down the corridor, the air thickening around them, a wave of heat licked at the edges of his senses. Others finally joined him, voices hushed with disbelief. They had entered the fray of an emergency, a scenario every self-help book warned against, where theoretical lessons merged abruptly with reality. The sight of the smoke pouring through the gaps in the elevator doors electrified his hope and fear, intertwining in a potent cocktail. Jack reached the elevator, taking a steadying breath, recalling every safety training he had long ago been exposed to while working within the building. He stepped back, assessing the scene before him. The world he had so painstakingly defined by his own insecurities was now irrelevant. This moment was about action, bravery, clarity. "Help me. We need to pry the doors open," he commanded, feeling a renewed strength rooting him to the ground as he rallied those around him. They all strained against the weight of uncertainty, their hands working together as adrenaline coursed through their veins. With a groan, the doors split just enough for a sliver of visibility into the cramped space. Inside, Jack could make out silhouettes, panic-stricken faces peering through the haze. He couldn't let fear tear this moment away. "We need to get them out. Now," he bellowed, even louder this time, his voice carrying an urgency that started to ignite the flames of determination in others beside him. Pushing aside his worries, the fear of inadequacy was eclipsed by protective instincts. The mentors and colleagues became his allies in that moment, baying for action, no longer mere faceless entities. They were united by purpose, and for the first time, Jack felt included, not just a janitor, but a leader. As they pulled the doors wider, cranking against the encroaching smoke, a figure emerged. It was a woman, her business attire slightly singed, her eyes wide with gratitude and disbelief. The sight of her felt like a rush of icy water, shocking him back to clarity. "Thank you," she gasped, and as her eyes met Jack's, a profound connection sparked. The vulnerability they both shared in that moment transcended the immediate danger. He saw a reflection of something he had long yearned for, recognition. Before he could respond, a shout echoed from behind them, "We need to evacuate, now." The urgency snapped the spell, and Jack suddenly realized that time was slipping. He turned to shout directives, but this surge of action opened a floodgate, revealing something more profound within him. He was not just equal to the others, he could lead them. "Follow my voice. Stick together." His voice rang out a rally, as they pressed forward, breathing through the fear and smoke as they ushered dozens out safely. As they poured into the bright light of the lobby, the sense of exhilaration coiled around him like a tight embrace, every risk suddenly tempered by the noble cause of saving lives. When the chaos settled and the dust cleared, he knew something had changed deeply within him, igniting a part of his spirit he thought was long extinguished. Then, amidst the shock and relief, her voice cut through the thrumming in his chest, "You were brilliant." "Who are you?" Jack felt his heart flutter, steadiness lost again. The question hovered in the air, a challenge against his previous self-doubt. He realized that this pivotal moment had just opened a new door, a call to redefine not just himself, but every individual's perception of him. No longer just a janitor, he replied with growing conviction, staring straight into her eyes, but a man defined by courage. And just then, the question nagged at him, waiting to unfurl a new layer of his identity: who else would he become from this moment? As Jack pondered what lay ahead, the door of opportunity creaked open wider, revealing a labyrinth of hurdles and transformations waiting for him to take the plunge. The brightness of the lobby felt almost surreal after the oppressive weight of smoke and chaos. Jack stood there, adrenaline still thrumming through him, as people rushed about, engulfed in post-crisis relief and disbelief. He could hear the sirens in the distance, a fading reminder that the peril was real, but for him, it marked a seismic shift, a moment of connection, courage, and opportunity. His thoughts turned to the woman he had helped, her words echoing in his mind. "Who are you?" They felt like a call to action, a challenge to assume a new identity. Jack stood among the heels and suits of professionals in the lobby, his janitorial uniform feeling heavier than ever, but simultaneously, it felt liberating. He was no longer just a janitor by profession, he was dressed in the mantle of a leader. Yet that mantle didn't sit comfortably. Doubt bubbled beneath the surface, whispering insidiously. Was he truly capable of maintaining this identity? Would he dissolve back into the background, the same man defined by insecurity? Jack gritted his teeth, fighting against the self-deprecating rhetoric that had plagued him for years. Taking a deep breath, he scanned the room to find familiar faces. Colleagues from the workshop looked at him with a mix of admiration and confusion. He approached a few, each wrapped in their own layers of anxiety and relief. "Did you see how we worked together?" he began, his voice shaking slightly as he attempted to decide whether to reclaim his role or quietly retreat. "If we can do that, then," he hesitated, the implications hitting him with dazzling clarity, "then we can achieve so much more." But a deep-rooted fear held him back. What if they didn't see him as an equal? What if they only remembered him as the cleanup guy? This internal tug-of-war muddled his thoughts, complicating the newfound recognition he had craved. "Jack," a voice cut through his reverie. It was the woman, the one he had saved. She approached him, quiet yet unwavering, her expression resolute. "I wanted to thank you again. What you did today was incredible." He felt warmth spread across his chest, a flare of pride mingling with disbelief. Yet, doubt crept in immediately. "I just did what anyone would do," he stammered, unable to fully embrace the accolades hovering close, threatening to swallow him whole. "No. Not everyone would act. You were decisive and brave when it mattered most." Her unwavering gaze bore into him, and he felt moments of vulnerability reveal his introspective battle. Did he even believe he was capable of such bravery? "Maybe now is your time," she said, and her voice held a gentle insistence that set off a chain of thoughts in his mind. What if he stepped into this new role? What if he seized the opportunity to redefine who he was, not just as a father, not merely as a janitor, but as a man of depth and courage? The prospect was intoxicating. Yet fear coiled tightly around the promise of possibility. Jackie envisioned himself in the company of CEOs, sharing thoughts and ideas, not just scrubbing toilets and mopping floors. "Listen," the woman continued, "I see potential in you. This moment could be the first of many. You could inspire others, perhaps even lead them." Jack felt a rush of emotions, a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Would that make him a fraud? Would others see him as an imposter amidst their polished worlds? "You've already taken the first step," she said, sensing his struggle, grounding him amidst swirling doubts. "You saved lives. That means you have something to offer." With her encouragement, a flicker of determination ignited within him, pushing back against the fears that had confined him. Perhaps holding on to the identity of a reluctant janitor had been a shield, a barrier against true vulnerability. Jack took another deep breath. "What's the next step?" he asked, his voice more defined now. "I'll help you find it," she replied. Her kindness washed over him, and he realized he was at a crossroads, grappling with potential yet unable to move forward. The reality of the challenge settled in. Jack had always been a survivor, but now he had to confront something more daunting: transformation. The journey before him promised trials and tribulations, doubts and fears, but it belonged to him. Jack felt buoyant, stepping back from the precipice of fear. The urge to retreat was strong, but a flicker of ambition now blazed within him. The uncertainty was still there, but along with it, a visceral recognition of courage. As they exchanged thoughts on how he could strive for more, Jack's heart beat fiercely, alive with the thrill of possibility. But lurking beneath that exhilaration was an unsettling question: if he did pursue this path of change, could he truly become the man he aspired to be, or would the weight of his past pin him down? The answer loomed dangerously close, like the edge of a waiting precipice. Jack steeled himself for the challenges ahead, unsure but resolute. The time had come for him to face the truth of who he could be. Would he leap or hesitate once more? A fresh surge of determination coursed through Jack as he prepared to embark on an unfamiliar journey. The woman he still didn't know her name, but a palpable connection lingered had opened a door, one he had never considered stepping through before. He felt the weight of his janitorial uniform lift slightly with each breath he took, making way for questions that weren't about cleaning up a mess but about the mess that had been his life thus far. What if I focused on what I could do, rather than what I can't? He pondered, standing resolute. Looking around the bustling lobby, he began to see each professional not as a figure of intimidation but as a potential ally. The world beyond his mop, a world of concepts, ideas, and strategies, seemed dizzyingly inviting. Jack imagined himself speaking confidently in boardrooms, his voice steady and assured. But each imagined moment was a fragile glass, teetering on a precipice. Wouldn't it shatter upon contact with reality? Let us start small, he thought, mentally cataloging potential actions he could take. He could reach out to his manager, express his interest in attending professional development courses. He could ask questions, gain insight, and perhaps even engage with mentorship. Have you ever thought about taking some courses? The woman's voice interrupted his reverie, nudging him out of his inner dialogue. Jack turned to her, surprised at her perceptiveness. Actually, yes. He found confidence he didn't know he had. I've been considering options. I'd like to improve my communication skills. Maybe I could learn about leadership. His heart raced as he boldly verbalized ideas he had previously relegated to the realm of fantasy. It feels necessary now. She nodded approvingly, a small smile creeping across her face. That's a fantastic start. And who knows what doors it might open. Her enthusiasm felt infectious, swirling around him like a warm breeze, fingers trembling at the prospect of taking this leap. Jack momentarily lost focus. But what if I fail? What if I don't have what it takes? He was suddenly gripped by a paralyzing fear that surged forth, overwhelming the budding ambition within. You can't get where you want to go without risk, she countered quickly, lifting her hands in an expressive gesture. Failure isn't a dead end, it's part of growth. Do you want a life defined by fear of what might happen? Her insight struck deep. What had he been so afraid of all these years? Jack realized he had denied himself chances because of a crippling mindset that branded him as less than. It was time to change this narrative, but how? So, what do I look for in a course? He asked, shifting focus back to his burgeoning goals. There was excitement rippling through him, and he could feel his curiosity reawakening. Perhaps vulnerability wasn't just about admitting fear, but about embracing the unknown. Look for skills that align with what you want to achieve. Leadership, public speaking, even negotiation, they're all vital. She gestured as she spoke, her enthusiasm sparking further ideas. Jack's mind raced. He envisioned walking into a crowded lecture hall, standing in front of others, not as the invisible janitor, but as an emerging leader, sharing insights and receiving applause. Yet as he reveled in this daydream, a lingering question clawed at him: would he be seen as a fraud? Would aspiring professionals truly take him seriously? The scars of his past nagged insistently, casting shadows over moments of illumination. Challenge that thought, she said softly as if she could read his mind. Who's to say you don't belong? Look where you've come from. That's part of your story. Jack's whole body tightened, incredulous at the ease with which she dismantled the fortress of self-doubt that had plagued him for so long. It was unsettling, galvanizing him against a familiar foe. Perhaps it was indeed time to rewrite his story, to allow the brighter chapters to unfold. Taking a deep breath, he became aware of the faintest flicker of clarity amidst the chaos of uncertainty. The looming questions were not the final word, they were invitations to explore deeper. "Okay, I will," he said with more conviction than he felt. "I want to be more. I want to make an impact." "Good. Let us make a plan." And with those words, Jack felt the gravity of his decision, a choice that anchored his resolve while setting his heart alight with ambition. However, deep within, he grappled with an unsettling realization: if he truly embraced this path, he would have to leave behind the safety of anonymity, exposing his vulnerabilities to a world that could either elevate or consume him. "As we move forward, just remember," the woman concluded, her expression unwavering, "the leap you take can define your future. Don't hesitate when it counts." Jack nodded, the steely weight of commitment settling atop his shoulders. Yet, despite this burgeoning willingness, he felt a fissure of anxiety. What ultimate sacrifices would he need to make to boldly seize his future? Would facing his insecurities lead to newfound support or isolation? The answers lingered with him as he prepared to take the plunge. He stood at the edge of opportunity, aware that the leap was only the beginning. As he ventured deeper into this uncharted territory, he couldn't shake the feeling that the first step might become only the start of a much more daunting journey, a journey toward truly discovering who he could become. Stepping away from the comforting familiarity of his janitorial duties, Jack felt a giddy mixture of excitement and dread. Unfazed by the swirling chaos of the lobby around him, he began to piece together a plan. It wasn't only about taking courses anymore, it was about actively weaving a new identity, one he had only dared to imagine. Yet, somewhere in the back of his mind, the nagging thought returned, bringing with it the weight of self-doubt: was he even capable of this transformation? He took a deep breath and resolved to confront those shadows before they quelled his ambitions. His first stop was his manager's office. As he walked through the polished halls, he felt the thrumming vibration of urgency pulse through him. Each step was an affirmation, a tiny rebellion against the narrative he had lived. Maybe today would be the day he would embrace the challenges instead of retreating. Knocking quietly, he pushed open the door. His manager, a stern yet fair woman, glanced up from behind her desk. The momentary surprise in her eyes told Jack all he needed to know: he was rarely viewed as anything but a faceless employee. "Jack," she began, "how can I help you?" He stammered, caught off guard. He had rehearsed this, yet here in real time, the words threatened to escape him. "I wanted to ask about training opportunities. Like communication or leadership courses." The query clung to the air between them, charged with anticipation. His manager raised an eyebrow, still digesting his unexpected request. "I didn't know you were interested in developing those skills." "Why now?" "Because I'm tired," he replied before he could censor himself. "I'm tired of hiding. I want to do more." The admission felt liberating, though it sparked a flicker of anxiety. Was he ready to be seen? She regarded him thoughtfully, leaning back in her chair. "It's not easy. You understand that the path to leadership involves commitment and resilience, right?" "I do," he affirmed, though an unease churned in his stomach. Would she see through him? Would she pine for the comfort of an anonymous janitor over a striving professional? "All right," she conceded. "I can help with finding resources. Commit to this, and if you make progress, I can even connect you with a mentorship program." The conversation shifted, pulling him into unfamiliar discussions about courses, certifications, and networking. Jack absorbed every word with fervor, a passion ignited. Yet, beneath that enthusiasm rested a call to action. This could be the beginning or another cycle of disappointment. Later that day, Jack returned home, his mind racing. He approached his desk, cluttered with reminders and invoices. This space had been a portal into another life, yet amid the disarray of daily routines, it lacked vision. Realigning his focus, he took a notebook and splashed ideas onto the pages: dreams of public speaking events, names of potential mentors, and goals for the next few months. Each scribbled line ignited a spark of hope that transported him beyond the confines of his current self. As he reflected, an unsettling knowledge washed over him. Every decision made now encompassed risks. Time spent learning meant less time on familiar chores. The question morphed: would the seeds invested in growth yield a desirable future, or would they squander his time, leaving him empty-handed? In the following weeks, Jack threw himself into his studies. He found himself surrounded by strangers, classmates whose lives and ambitions painted a vivid tapestry against his more humble canvas. Conversations that began as daunting transformed into exhilarating exchanges. Slowly, but unmistakably, he shed layers of his janitorial identity, embracing the complexities of leadership, yet, even with strides made, he sensed unsettling undercurrents. Doubts rekindled during moments of solitude, eruptions of imposter syndrome clung to his conscience like shadows. He questioned his legitimacy as he mingled with futures brightened by privilege. Jack's grip on his emerging identity felt tenuous, a shimmering reflection on water that threatened to dissolve with the slightest ripple. As he stood at the crossroads between ambition and anxiety, one moment confronted him with stark clarity. Would he continue to wrestle with the specters of recognition and acceptance, or would he embrace the prospect of failure as a true companion along this path? Determined, Jack vowed to face these challenges squarely, but he was met with a harbinger of change, a test he hadn't seen coming. He received an email that could alter everything: a public speaking competition for employees presenting innovative ideas. Taking part could be the breakthrough he desperately needed, but behind the opportunity lurked a paralyzing dilemma. With the deadline looming, he grappled with two stark choices: cling to the safety of obscurity or take center stage, risking potential ridicule or honor. Jack's heart raced with uncertainty. As the clock ticked, he knew he needed to make a decision that would either affirm or forever alter his newfound ambition. The question began to form in his mind, demanding urgent reflection: would he step into the spotlight, or would fear once again dictate the terms of his life? Jack sat at his kitchen table, the faint smell of coffee mingling with the quiet anxiety of his thoughts. The email pinged in his inbox, a vibrant beacon of opportunity battling the heavy cloud of self-doubt that threatened to envelop him. It included a brief description of the public speaking competition, an event designed to showcase innovative ideas within the company. He had always watched from the margins, but now the invitation lay in front of him, unrelenting as a mirror reflecting his aspirations. He clicked on the message again, reading through the details for the umpteenth time. The competition required both creativity and confidence, two qualities that seemed foreign to him but were slowly becoming part of his evolving narrative. As the deadline approached, he felt the pressure swell, challenging his resolve. Each word of the final push toward submission whispered promises of transformation, yet taunted him with the ghosts of inadequacy. Could he really do this? The thought slithered in and out of his mind like a relentless tide. The image of his former self, the janitor known for his quiet compliance, stood in stark contrast to the emerging figure he was attempting to become, a confident communicator ready to present and influence. He leaned back, closing his eyes, pressing his palms against his temples, willing the thoughts ranging in his mind to coalesce into clarity. He had been developing new skills, diving into leadership concepts, and participating in assertiveness workshops. Why was stepping onto that stage still an insurmountable challenge? Jack opened his eyes and searched for a hint of reassurance in the scattered notes piled around him. They reflected his chaotic journey of growth, but among them, he found a scrawled reminder of why he had decided to pursue this path in the first place: to show my son that courage opens doors. That thought rekindled an ember of determination within him. His son deserved a role model who embraced challenges, whose failures were not hidden but shared openly as stepping stones toward success. Test after test had shaped him, yet here he was, meticulously defining his own destiny. Time was slipping through his fingers as though it were a substance more tangible. The competition fell closer on the calendar, intensifying his internal conflict as he weighed the safety of anonymity against the allure of recognition. Jack took a deep breath, realizing that to step forward meant risking judgment and rejection. But the more he embraced that discomfort, the clearer it became. He had a voice worthy of being heard. Fueled by a newfound audacity, he opened his laptop and began drafting his pitch outline. Ideas flowed like a waterfall, a conceptual framework that centered on adaptability in the workplace, drawing parallels to his journey as a janitor embracing transformation. Yet, as he developed his narrative, the familiar shadow of doubt nudged back into his periphery. What if he stumbled? What if his ideas fell flat before seasoned colleagues? The looming specter of public opinion threatened to suffocate his burgeoning confidence. Determination twisted into resolve. Resolving to confront these fears, he sought out the resources available. Would his classmates offer insights? Could mentors enlighten his perspective? Days passed in a blur of research, discussions, and rehearsals with anyone willing to listen. With each interaction, his skill deepened, and his personal growth accelerated. The hesitations that once snared him now transformed into catalysts driving him forward. But just as he began to feel the confidence seep into his veins, news arrived that jolted his focus. The scheduled event date had changed, bringing it even nearer, pinching his time to refine and perfect. He was racing against the clock, and instead of fading, the pressure intensified his motivations either rise or risk retreating back into the shadows. Now, standing at this pivotal crossroad, Jack could feel the stakes amplifying. This wouldn't just be a competition. It was his declaration against self-doubt. As he practiced in front of the mirror, heart thrumming, he realized this was the moment of truth. Would he rise to meet the fear head-on and embrace the light of opportunity, or would the comfort of the safe spaces he had long inhabited call him back into the fold of obscurity? The answer was still undefined, but for the first time, it didn't solely hinge on avoidance. Something larger was at play, a message that had yet to fully emerge from within. Jack took a deep breath, allowing the moment to solidify. Just as he turned to walk away from the mirror, a thought broke through the tethering fog in his mind, echoing with newfound clarity. The challenge wasn't just about public speaking, it was about confronting the real fire inside him, one that demanded to be expressed, free of fear and doubt, and that ember was about to ignite. But in that collective silence before he took the stage, one final question bubbled to the surface. Would the roar of applause drown out the whispers of doubt, or would it become the catalyst of something far greater? Jack stood backstage, heart pounding like a drum against the silence of impending judgment. The air felt thick, almost electric, laden with possibilities and expectations. The spotlight, which had once seemed a source of dread, now felt like a beacon of opportunity. He could hear the murmur of the audience, an amalgamation of anticipation and familiarity. Flashes of doubt trickled through his mind. What if he stumbled? What if his ideas stumbled and fell flat? Yet, with each thought, the weight of the moment shifted. He recalled Lily's smile, the glimmer of hope and resilience that had driven his journey. He envisioned her watching him, eyes wide with admiration. He was not just standing there as a janitor, he was a father who had embraced the challenge of self-improvement. He could not let fear dictate this moment. Stepping into the limelight, he felt a rush of adrenaline rush through him. The lights dimmed around him, but within him, a fire ignited, a stark contrast to the doubt that had once consumed him. Jack took a deep breath, centering himself, letting the initial flicker of fear fade into the background. The crowd awaited him, filled with faces he had once seen only from a distance. That distance evaporated as he consciously stepped forward, embracing his newfound identity. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice slightly shaky, but with each word, he conquered a bit more of his nerves. The audience seemed to lean in, marking the momentary tension with a palpable curiosity. "My name is Jack, and I'm here to share a story, a real journey of transformation." He could feel the warmth of their attention wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. He spoke passionately about adaptability, paralleling his life's narrative to the paths taken within that very office, the lessons learned in the shadow of opportunity, the metamorphosis from just a janitor to a catalyst for change and leadership. Each point resonated deeper than the last, and the fear that had initially swallowed him began dissipating, replaced by solid confidence. The anecdotes flowed easily, moments of vulnerability transformed into triumph. Each word shaped a vision of resilience, a vision that was as much his own as it was a beacon for those listening. The synergy of his passion met their curiosity. He was no longer a mere bystander in his own life but the architect of his destiny. As he reached the culmination of his speech, Jack offered his signature call to action. each of us has the potential to rise above our circumstances. Don't let your past define you. Embrace the fire within and ignite change not just for yourselves, but for everyone who looks to us for inspiration. The applause erupted like a tidal wave, rolling over him, drowning the lingering shadows of self-doubt. In that moment, Jack realized the echoes of his past no longer held power over him. He had found a voice worth hearing. As he stepped off the stage, adrenaline coursing through his veins, he felt a vibrant sense of accomplishment, a tangible growth that anchored him firmly in his newfound role. Exhilaration replaced the self-doubt. The applause was not merely recognition of his speech but a validation of his journey. Jack was not just seen but revered, and he had conquered the barriers that had once imprisoned him. Hours later, after the event had faded and the buzz of excitement stirred throughout the building, he received a visit from Sarah, her face glowing with pride. "You were remarkable, Jack. I always believed in you, but witnessing you up there was incredible." The sincerity of her admiration washed over him, bolstering his sense of worth. "Thank you, Sarah," he replied, the warmth of her words relaxing him. "It's like shedding an old skin, embracing the person I was always meant to be." Jack knew he still had much to learn and grow into, but for the first time, those vast horizons no longer felt insurmountable. He had proven to himself that courage wasn't the absence of fear but the conscious decision to rise above it, to meet challenges head-on. The potential within him was no longer just a whisper, it roared louder than the flame from that night. He was not just a janitor but a developing leader, and he was here to stay. As he left the office, a smile on his face, Jack pulled out his phone to send Lily a message. He could already visualize her reaction, the pride shining in her young eyes. He was building a legacy worthy of her admiration. Jack had taken his place in the world, and in doing so, he had begun to write a narrative of purpose, one where the struggle transformed into strength and decisive action led to unparalleled achievements. This was not merely a momentary victory but the beginning of a journey toward a life he had always dreamed of, a life filled with possibility, courage, and unwavering belief in himself. Defiantly, he walked forward, ever eager to embrace what lay ahead. Now it's your turn to embody courage and make a change. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories, leave a like now to feed the algorithm, comment your reactions and theories about this thrilling transformation, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this journey of personal growth. You need to show your support for stories of overcoming adversity.